Morning. We could all find our seats. The Transit and Bus Committee meeting is called to order. Mr. Huh? Mr. Marino, are there any members of the public who have registered and wish to speak?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We have 5 public speakers this morning. The first speaker is Haley Richardson, and Ms. Richardson will be followed by Jason Pinheiro.
Good morning. I'm Haley Richardson from Transit Center on behalf of the Bus Turnaround Coalition. Events of the past few weeks have made it clear that this agency and the elected and appointed officials who oversee it need to take action to ensure that our public transit system is one that New Yorkers can depend on. Alongside recent dramatic subway meltdowns, our bus system's performance has continued to deteriorate and buses have continued to hemorrhage riders. In the March operations report shared this month, weekday weight assessment on local buses was down system-wide, with the biggest performance declines in the Bronx and Brooklyn. There were 200,000 fewer rides on New York City local buses on weekdays in March 2017 than in March 2016, a drop of more than 8%. Our bus system is in crisis. Last week, in conjunction with 67 state legislators, the Bus Turnaround Coalition released a letter to Governor Cuomo asking him to direct the MTA to implement 2 low-cost solutions to improve bus service. First, we should expedite implementation of transit signal priority on high ridership routes throughout the city. In testimony to the New York City Council last week, New York City DOT Commissioner Polly Trottenberg attested that signal priority has been tremendously successful in the handful of places where it's been implemented so far. We should be expanding the use of this proven tool as quickly as we can. We need a clear timeline and action plan for the implementation of signal priority on high ridership routes across the system. Second, we should commit to a multi-door boarding policy for local buses when the new fare payment system comes online. The post-Metro card system is a big opportunity to improve our buses. Let's not let our 2 million bus riders down. In the meantime, riders are waiting too long, and when they do get on the bus, they're moving too slowly. They're missing doctor's appointments, arriving to work late, and arriving to school late. We know the tools at our disposal to turn around service decline. New Yorkers should know that the agency is addressing their plight as quickly and aggressively as possible. We look forward to seeing a detailed plan and timeline on the implementation of signal priority and other aspects of your bus reform effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. The next speaker is Jason Pinheiro, and he'll be followed by Murray Bowden. Mr. Pinheiro.
Good morning, President Irad. Good morning, Freddie. Good morning, Andrew. And good morning, the rest of the committee. And good morning, Dr. H, for the very last term. What are we going to do about the subway delays? Is the power problems that we've been having for the last several weeks is going to be norm? What the hell is going on here? Dr. Eric, I hope that you have a positive answer to this in your report, because it is a disgrace that people like me that had surgery at the beginning of the month being denied for a decent seat every time that we ride the subway. As a matter of fact, yesterday when I was going home, I was on the N train from Times Square all the way to Atlantic Avenue Barclays Center, my home stop. This person, a female of course, denied me a seat. Why? By the simple fact that I'm wearing a special boot due to a surgery that I had May 4th? This isn't fair. The buses are running too slow. The trains are over capacity levels. What are we going to do? It's time to improve our subway system and stop with the bureaucracy. We need more transparency.
Thank you, Mr. Pinheiro. The next speaker is Murray Bowden, and Mr. Bowden will be followed by Liz Patrick. Mr. Bowden.
Jane, it's a pleasure to see you here today. I just want you to know I miss the candy at MTA Candy used, and I think about it often. Jane used to speak at many of these meetings. Today I'd like to talk about a few meetings I've been to lately and some of the information I've learned. Sam Schwartz used to be transportation, Gridlock Sam. I was to two of his seminars. What I learned at one of them was that Penn Station is a dead-end station. Long Island Railroad goes there, it stops. New Jersey Transit goes there, stops. And at one of those meetings that somebody presented the idea, why should it stop? New Jersey Transit could just as well go to Jamaica. Long Island Railroad could just as well go to Secaucus. It would increase the capacity of the station because you wouldn't have people getting on. It would make the station significantly more efficient. And then all of a sudden somebody discovered that Amtrak could actually go to Grand Central Station, which I knew about 20 years ago when Peter Canito was president of Metro North, but somehow it seemed to have gotten lost. The number 7 line should really start in Secaucus. That should be the beginning and the end of the 7 line, going right across Manhattan into wherever. I met with John Degner of the Port Authority last week because we've been disagreeing on the bus terminal, because I don't believe the bus terminal should be expanded and that the transfer point should be, I don't want to go into Title VI at this time, but I don't want to be discriminated against because I'm a white male. I'll go into that at the 5th meeting. That's discrimination. It's right up there on a wall. You need to think about doing transit in a different way. Penn Station should be a through station. There should be coordination between Long Island Railroad, New Jersey Transit, Metro North, and Amtrak should be dissolved and disappear. There should be an East Coast corridor called something else, but not Amtrak. And it can happen, and it will happen.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. The next speaker is Liz Patrick, and Ms. Patrick will be followed by Gene Rushinoff and Jackie Cohen.
Hello, I'm Liz Patrick from the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association, and I came here today to ask your help with a bus operations problem that we're having at a temporary stop for the M15 local, which normally stops between 72nd and 71st. The issue is most bus drivers are unaware of the new temporary stop, which is now a block north, very close to the escalator entrance for the Q, our new subway station. For some reason, a construction project began last Wednesday, the 17th, and it takes up it's on the west side of 2nd Avenue, and it takes up the entire block between 72nd and 71st. It's 5 feet onto the sidewalk, and it's the entire bus lane. There's no sign redirecting people to the temporary bus stop. There's just a black plastic bag tied around the old sign. And where the new temporary stop is, there's just a piece of cardboard with black magic marker saying temporary bus stop, and it's attached to a street sign. Now, we've reached out to our liaison at DOT, who's usually very helpful, Colleen Chattergoon, and we've asked her, can she try to learn how long this construction project's going to take, and should we, in fact, try to get better signage? However, since not all of the bus drivers are aware of the new temporary location, they're passing by these riders who've been waiting We stationed some volunteers there during peak times to try to flag down the bus, and we were able to get some buses that were stopped at 72nd Street red light to allow passengers to board who were just halfway up the block at the temporary location. So anything you could do to help us would be appreciated. You remember last week we were boiling in the heat, so it was really hard to wait. And now, of course, it's back to springtime. Robert Marino gave me his contact information before the meeting, so I have it now and we can call the corner. But anything you could do to help us right now would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Patrick. We'll be in touch. The next speaker is Gene Rushinoff and Jackie Cohen from the Strap Hangers campaign.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board of the MTA. Jackie and I really struggled to come up with a good metaphor for how bad the accessoride program is. It's run by the MTA. And then it hit us. It's a modern version of the 10 plagues. So here, without any ado, is the 5 of the 10 plagues. We'll be back on Wednesday with the remainder. So, plague 1. Plague 1. The plague of lateness. You're 2 hours late because your accessoride driver drove all over the country, and you miss your appointment. The accessoride program is a joke in the medical world.
The plague of stuffing. So thank God it's Friday, but when 5 of you are stuffed in an accessoride car, you'll be lucky to be home while it is still, in fact, Friday.
The plague of wandering. The dispatcher tells your driver, go to Bay Ridge, go where you feel like it, and come back and pick the other guy up when you're ready for him. And the result is that people are in very poor service.
The plague of hot, hot, hot. So no air conditioning, a broken fan, 2 windows stuck closed. Of course, it's in the middle of a heat wave.
The plague of Mount Everest. Who had the bright idea to use SUV-type steps so the senior citizens could lurch to the top of the step and throw themselves, heave them into the car? That's our time. As I said, we'll be back on Wednesday with the other remaining 5 plagues. This is a terrible system. The MTA has an opportunity here to make it a much better one. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Rushinoff. That was the last speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The minutes from the April committee meeting are in the committee book. May I have a motion to approve and a second? Are there any changes or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting them? Okay, opposed? Abstaining? The minutes are adopted. Mr. Irick, are there any changes to the work plan?
No, there are not.
Then I'd like to ask you to make your opening statement.
Thank you. Good morning. I begin this morning with an exciting announcement. On May 15th, the MTA unveiled a 6-point plan to address the top causes of delays that cause disruptions that impact service reliability. While we continue to advance the largest and most aggressive capital plan to renew, enhance, and expand the system, we also developed a more immediate plan targeted at short-term achievable service improvements. We've heard from our customers who have been letting us know that major incidents in the system make their trips more uncertain than ever. It is these major incidents that cause extensive delays that need to be addressed. Delays attributed to track and signal, sick passengers, police activity, car equipment failures, station dwell time, and system bottlenecks. The near-term solution will introduce new technologies and programmatic changes based on best practices from around the world, and will leverage and build upon the significant upgrades planned as part of the MTA's $29 billion capital plan. The first phase of this system-wide initiative will begin immediately on the 8th Avenue corridor from 125th Street to Fulton Street, and will roll out in phases across the 8th Avenue line over the next 6 months. Individual aspects of this initiative will then be introduced on other lines following their rollout on the 8th Avenue corridor. Winton will provide further details on the plan. I'd also like to take a moment to congratulate 4 outstanding New York City Transit and MTA bus leaders, Peter Caffiaro, Sally Labrera, Frank Anacaro, and Devon Rogers, for their recent graduation from the Leadership Exchange and Development Program, also known as LEAD. In October 2015, the MTA hosted the inaugural session of the program with 8 other large transit agencies. It has proven to be a true strategic interagency learning and leadership development program focused on the transit industry. In speaking with the participants about their experiences, it is clear to me that the program has already sparked a valuable dialogue on their shared experiences, best practices, and challenges in the transit industry. And I know that this investment in our future leaders pays significant dividends down the road. Thank you.
Are we on? Yeah, we're on. Thank you for that presentation. Obviously, those of us that use the system frequently have noticed that our trips have gotten longer and the dwell time has increased in places and what have you. You know the routine. So we welcome, obviously, this attempt to turn things around. We do note that some of these items were tried in 2015. Target the highest incident locations, increased, continuous welded rail, ultrasonic testing of So do we have any knowledge of how those items worked in the 2015 attempt to correct things and why we're still dealing with these same problems today?
So what I would say is, first of all, many of the diagnostics are the same. Many of the concepts in terms of proven railroad techniques for improving service are the same. What's different here, there are a few elements that are certainly different, particularly Winton will talk about some of the specifics like health hubs and what have you. But I think the planning, better planning and better implementation here, ways to measure, more openness, innovative best practices, all of that being a part of this new effort makes it stand out. And we have a lot of confidence that this is going to bear fruit.
Is more personnel being dedicated to these efforts this time?
Yes, there's an investment in terms of physical resources and human resources also.
If there's nothing else, I'd like to ask Mr. Havisham to address the subway performance indicator.
Good morning. We have been discussing service delivery challenges for quite some time at TA Committee. We've analyzed operating performance and have shared information with the committee regarding the long-term trends that have contributed to increasing delays, including heavy maintenance and significant crowding as we accommodate record levels of ridership, all on a century-old system. We have also looked outside our system for solutions to delays, reaching out to other properties to understand what works for them and what may also be effective in New York City. These efforts have informed the recently unveiled System Reliability and Service Improvement Plan, otherwise known as the 6-Point Plan. I'd like to now review the key subways elements of that plan. To address track and signal-related delays, we are implementing an intensive preventative and corrective maintenance program to aggressively target components most prone to failure. This will be aided through greater use of ultrasonic testing, which will now occur twice a month. Additionally, we will continue the expansion of continuous welded rail, which is less likely to break than jointed rail. We're expanding our track and signals rapid response teams, which help reduce the emergency crew response time from 30 minutes to 15 minutes. To help improve trash on tracks, we will expand our successful portable vacuum pilot program and bring it system-wide through the purchase of 10 more portable units. We aim to minimize disruptions caused by sick passengers through the deployment of emergency medical technicians at 5 key stations to speed up response times. We're also working with the NYPD to more efficiently coordinate law enforcement response to lessen the service impact of unruly customers. We plan to improve circulation in crowded stations and subway cars through use of color coding to guide passengers to the least crowded areas of the train, while encouraging them to move towards the center of the cars as well. We're adding more platform staff and will enhance their role as service ambassadors through a new training program, digital tools, and improved coordination with public address system in stations to better inform passengers about station-specific issues. In order to address bottlenecks in the system, we are planning to use experienced service managers and better technology to ensure that trains move quickly through critical merge points. Lastly, in order to address car reliability, we will target poor-performing components of cars through more inspections, root cause analyses, and car fleet performance statistics. I want to now talk a moment about a few events that occurred last Friday. On the 4 and 5 lines between Borough Hall and Bowling Green, we experienced a signal problem caused by an issue with a signal stop motor. This incident resulted in reduced capacity of the under-river tube by 2/3. Now, rather than let the service reduction continue through the rush hour, we made a decision to suspend service for 45 minutes in order to effect quick but temporary repairs. We continue to investigate the root cause of the issue. However, during the weekend's planned outage, permanent repairs were made. As challenging as this incident was for our riders, we felt this course of action presented the best solution and allowed us to salvage a good portion of the rush hour. Also on Friday, we experienced debris on the tracks at the Hoyt Street Station in Brooklyn, resulting from small pieces of concrete falling from the ceiling. While this posed no immediate danger to our customers or our employees, we diverted service away from the station while maintenance crews investigated the situation and removed the remaining loose concrete from the ceiling. While the ceiling was dry on Friday, we did find evidence of past water infiltration and are investigating the cause. It's these types of incidents that the enhanced inspections we are implementing as part of the 6-point plan will help identify and prevent. I now want to share with you some good news regarding the 2nd Avenue subway, last week's escalator challenges notwithstanding. Ridership on the 2nd Avenue line continues to grow. Total daily use has increased from 124,000 passengers opening week to 176,000 passengers each weekday, and those are early May numbers. Later on in the agenda, Judy McLean will be presenting a staff summary with service increases on the queue. Many of these new 2nd Avenue customers have shifted to the new queue route from the 4, 5, and 6 trains, and daily ridership on the 4 closest 4, 5, and 6 stations is down 26%. And in the morning peak, it's down 40%. This has reduced crowding on the Lexington Avenue line, and the 4, 5, and 6 lines now meet our customer loading guidelines. In addition to reducing crowding, the 2nd Avenue subway has also improved the operating performance on the Lexington Avenue line. Weight assessment has improved on the 6 by over 3% from before the opening of 2nd Avenue subway to after the opening of the first quarter of 2017. Weight assessment on the 6 is also better than the same time last year by 0.5%. Rush hour dwell times decreased on the 4, 5, and 6, especially on the 6 line. Overall running times have also decreased, especially on the 6 line during the rush hours. For instance, running times decreased by more than 1.5 minutes in the PM rush hour on the 6 line in both directions. This concludes our operating report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Havisham on that? Yeah, Mr. Greenberg.
Just some brief comments. I appreciate the efforts being made to improve service. We've seen declines in service over the last few years. The weight assessment shows it. I just wish, I hope as this goes ahead, there's some report or some follow-up to this, or even in the monthly statistics, because as they're presented now, and I'm for the way they're presented now, they're one-year rolling averages. So if there's an improvement of several months, it's not going to show. So it'd be good if there was something that showed your effort and the results. As I did know, previously there were efforts made on the 6 train. I think there were some positive results there in terms of platform conductors and the like. The other thing we have to be mindful of is that there's a good amount of ridership, I think, especially in Manhattan and probably parts of Brooklyn, that came off our buses and onto the subway, creating a crowding situation, heavy on, heavy off at many stations. And I think we really have to, redouble our efforts to improve bus service, and that includes New York City DOT playing its part as well. We're bleeding ridership off the bus system. I can't believe those people are riding cabs. They got to be, a lot of them are going into our system, and that's creating a problem. That's part of the problem in our transit system. So I think we really do have to look at the bus system and stepping it up, and that includes the City of New York and DOT doing the same thing with dedicated bus lanes, giving priorities to buses. That's really it. That's the way I see it. But I would love to see follow-up, because we did do some work on the 7 and the 6. I know, and I think there was, and the F train. I think this was over a year ago, and there were some positive results to that. So I'm encouraged by your efforts here, and I hope to see the results to that, and I hope our riders will appreciate it and experience that. Thank you.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, this is a comment and a request. The 6-point program to improvement, it would have been nice if the board didn't have to read about it in the press. I fully support. I think it's a great idea, but it's sort of odd as a board member and fiduciary having to read about it. So I would ask in future, with the nature of the public discontent and our own discontent with increasing delays, that you give us at least a heads up before it appears in the press.
Duly noted.
I'll take it. Mr.
And to go along with the 6-point plan, and I think the increased attention to medical emergencies is a great part of it, because sick passengers are a good percentage of the cause of delays. I don't know why the 8th Avenue line seems to have more. I don't know, is there something in the water over there? But shouldn't we also have interim on-time performance for lines, so that if a delay is happening, I'll use the 7th Avenue Express, for example, between 72nd and Chambers, it can be, the cause of that can be determined as to whether it's a police action, if it's a broken switch, if it's bad rail, if it's people holding doors, or if it's a capital need. Wouldn't it behoove us to know exactly in sections what the on-time performance is like, so that we could then address those particular issues?
Absolutely. Fully agree with you. The team agrees with you. We're grappling with that. I would say that we would like to come back at the appropriate time to talk about how we measure performance, and particularly on-time performance. As you know, today and historically, it's terminal on-time performance, which really does not really spell the experience for most of our customers. So your point is well taken.
There's no one else. I'll ask Mr. Vidal to address the bus operations report.
Good morning. I'm happy to announce that this past weekend, in collaboration with our partners at New York City DOT, we introduced select bus service on the M79. The M79 is one of the most heavily used Manhattan crosstown bus routes. By implementing SBS with off-board fare collection and targeted bus lanes, we will enhance the bus riding experience for the 15,000 M79 weekday customers. The M79 SBS will be our 14th SBS route on our 13th corridor. The positive results we have seen from SBS are the clearest evidence we have that faster travel times are strongly correlated to increasing bus ridership. On a somber note, as many of you may remember, in 2014, one of our bus operators, William Pena, was tragically killed on duty serving customers on the M14 route. William was a 17-year veteran of the MTA and a friend to his customers. He was a beloved husband to Nancy and a devoted father to Gabrielle. In March of this year, the man who crashed a stolen box truck into William's bus was found guilty of aggravated vehicular homicide, second-degree manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter, and reckless endangerment. This month, he finally was sentenced to 8 1/3 years to 25 years in prison. This has truly been a long and arduous road for William's family, friends, and the entire Buses family. On behalf of the organization, we would like to take this opportunity to express our deepest thanks and appreciation to the MTA Police, New York City Police Department, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for their hard work and dedication in pursuing justice for William. The Pena family was supported by TWU local members and Buses management throughout this very difficult court proceeding. I would also like to recognize the invaluable efforts of our chaplain's office, which ministered to the spiritual needs of William's family, as well as his extended Buses family. The chaplain's office has always been there to offer guidance and support to anyone going through a difficult time, and we greatly appreciate their work. We will continue to remember William each day as we pass through the William Pena Swing Room, named in his honor at the Michael J. Quill Depot. This completes the operations report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this part of the operations report? Mr. Vitiello?
A question for you about the bus lanes. Of late, it seems the double parking in the bus lanes, at least anecdotally, is at proportions that render, in many cases, the lane ineffective. And in fact, make it more problematic, because I watched the bus have to stop in a traffic lane to load and unload because it can't get into its own bus lane. Have we thought about, can we look at, as some other cities have, having cameras on the bus for ticketing purposes for vehicles parked in the bus lane?
Yes, as a matter of fact, in our July plan, we're putting forward additional funding so that we could extend the pilot on that. We did it several years ago. It was relatively successful, but there were some obstacles we need to overcome, which we feel we're in a better position now to pilot. So we're looking to pursue that before the end of the year and then expand it out. But yeah, I agree with you. That's a significant component to our travel times.
And in addition to that, have we thought about, I've heard some desire on the part of MTA Security, who are already authorized to write theft of services on those buses, on the express buses, about giving them authority to write tickets.
Can you repeat that? I didn't follow it.
MTA Security, who are on the buses for theft of services.
The Eagle team, don't
The Eagle teams.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
We currently write tab summonses on select bus service lines.
Right.
It's a tab summons, not theft of service, is actually an arrest.
Sorry.
So
Okay.
that's all right, just to kind of make that
Yep,
difference.
fair enough.
You know?
But so some of the, in speaking to some of those guys who, by chance, I happen to frequent a diner where they where they spend their lunch a lot.
Everybody give you a summons, or is it okay?
No.
Okay.
And I always ask them, what would be the one thing you think you guys see that would make the buses run more consistently? And they say, if we could write parking tickets, it would probably really help. And we spend a lot of time during the day chasing away, as we're doing our job, chasing away double parkers in the lanes.
Right.
Do you think that's a viable idea?
I think we actually explored that a couple of years ago to do. Our main focus is really on the fare evasion. We didn't want to start doing parking violation, type citations. It was just more of a focus towards fare evasion, because we want to check as many people as we can on these buses. That's why.
Yes, so I just want to add, some of our superintendents today, many years ago, that was an initiative in our buses department. Many of us wrote tickets years ago. We've moved away from that, but it is under consideration again, and particularly with the group that's out there, the Eagle team that works for Bobby. So it's under consideration. It's a great idea.
Ms. Vanterpool.
I just want to add to Mr. Vizel's response in response to Commissioner Vitiello's question. So, Jamie, just really quick. There is camera enforcement on select corridors throughout New York City, but the MTA needs state authorization in order to expand that program, and I think it's important to remind the board and the general public that that has been under attack. That legislation, which has been very effective, has been under attack in some legislative sessions. So I'm glad to hear you show your support and state your support of it. I know the MTA and New York City DOT have been very supportive of that, as have the bus riding community.
Okay. Are we ready for the safety report? Cheryl Kennedy.
Okay. Turning to the first grid on safety performance, results were as follows. With the exception of fires, all items discussed refer to rates. Subway customer accidents had a slight increase when comparing the 12-month period of March 2016 through February 2017 with the prior 12 months. Subway fires were relatively flat when comparing April 2016 through March 2017 with the prior 12-month period. 99.5% of the fires reported for the 12-month period were low or average severity. When analyzing bus performance, bus collisions, collision injuries, and customer accidents were up when comparing the 12-month period of April 2016 through March 2017 with the prior 12-month period. Bus Operations has instituted several steps to address accidents, including the implementation of an aggressive communication strategy targeted at bus operators and the challenges they face as we transition from season to season. Employee lost time accidents decreased when comparing the 12-month period of April 2016 through March 2017 with the prior 12-month period. Turning to the second grid on leading indicators, Bus Operations is currently looking at enhancements to their pilot programs, which will not hinder achievement of their goals. All projects are progressing along and are expected to meet their targets. That completes the safety report.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the safety report? Hearing none, I'll ask Chief Coogan to present the crime report.
Okay, good morning. Total major felonies in transit are up 3.7% year-to-date, with 28 additional incidents through April. There were 17 more felony assaults and 47 more grand larceny incidents year-to-date. Robberies remain down substantially this year, a 22% decline from last year with 36 fewer incidents. As I reported last month, the overall crime picture year-to-date within transit has improved. For the month of April, total major felonies were down 7.5%. In fact, except for one additional felony assault for the month, total major felonies declined. This includes a 3.2% drop in grand larcenies and a 27% reduction in robberies during the month. I would also like to add that violent crimes, murder, rape, robbery, and assault combined, are down year-to-date in transit with a 7.7% decline. 36% of the total major felonies year-to-date were committed in Manhattan, 30% in Brooklyn, 19% in the Bronx, and 15% occurred in Queens. The average number of major felonies during April decreased from 6.2% to 5.7 crimes, as did the average number of robberies per day, which dropped from 1.3 to 1. As we have reported many times, thefts of opportunity continue to make up a large portion of subway crime. Thefts of unattended property or from unsecured bags or backpacks, and of course thefts from sleeping riders, make up slightly more than half of all major felonies in transit. In fact, out of every 3 larcenies in our subways are from passengers who are asleep at the time of the theft. With that said, the fact is that New Yorkers work very hard for me to simply say don't fall asleep on a train and expect to be taken seriously. Many of our riders work 2 or 3 jobs, work late nights, work overtime, or are out on a well-deserved night in the town as part of life in this city. As the weather warms up, I ask everyone to understand that criminals increasingly look to take advantage of this. Please keep alert and make an extra effort to secure your valuable property while riding the subway. With that, I welcome any questions or suggestions that you may have. Thank you.
Mr. Jones.
Chief Coogan, as you are aware, at last month's meeting, as the minutes reflect, I asked that you start reporting on reports of fare evasion and stops for that. I looked in the book. I don't see such a report, and I just wanted to know if that's going to be forthcoming.
I'll discuss that with Chief Fox. That is very time consuming. We did get that for you at, when you did ask for it the one time. But to do it every month, it is a time consuming process.
I see that also. I was just at the Long Island Railroad committee meeting, and they do make such a report. So I'm unclear what this is about. We obviously spend a lot of time on a very difficult thing, which is human rights violation on the buses and subways. I don't quite understand what the resistance is to this particular issue.
It's not a resistance.
It's become more and more pressing on me because I realize this is a shock to many people in the communities of the city of New York to find so many people and so many young people stopped for fare evasion. 30,000 arrests means that a large part of your department's work is engaged in this kind of activity. And I think if we did a survey of New York and its ridership, it would indicate that this is not their highest priority. So I would again insist that we start to have these reports. I don't think it's that onerous. I know you collect it. I've seen it in other committees, and I don't quite understand the resistance. I am disturbed as well, and I think you should take it back to Chief Fox, that when I approached him with Commissioner Polly Trottenberg, he agreed to provide the stations and arrest records, and I have not received a formal response to that request. So, I'm an appointee of the mayor. If I have to take it up the chain, I will. But I think it's unnecessary. This is something the public, at least the public that I respond to, are extraordinarily interested in because of the high rate of arrests among blacks and Latinos youth, and also the new problem of potential deportation of green card holders and young people whose immigration status has not been established. So we need this information. So I really would like you to take a new look at that because it is a very important thing and it has disturbed many people in the communities that I care about.
Okay. I could discuss that with you further after the meeting if you would like.
Absolutely, sir.
Anyone else? Thank you. Then I'll ask Craig Cipriano to address the finance report.
Thank you. Preliminary March 2017 New York City Transit farebox revenue of $389.8 million was $7 million, or 1.8% below budget. The revenue underrun was due in part to the impact of the snowstorm on Tuesday, March 14th that deposited more than 7 inches of snow and resulted in the suspension of all above-ground subway service from 4 a.m. to 6 p.m. Year-to-date revenue was $1,062.4 million, $21.9 million, or 2% below budget, due to a negative ridership trend as well as adverse weather. New York City Transit operating expenses were below budget by $17.3 million, or 2.5%. Labor expenses underran budget by $10.5 million, or 2%, caused mostly by lower health and welfare, OPEB current expenses, resulting from the favorable timing of expenses and vacancies. Non-labor expenses were also under budget by $6.8 million, or 4.4%. including favorable results in energy costs and paratransit service contract expenses. Year-to-date, operating expenses were less than budget by $27.8 million, or 1.4%, including lower net labor costs of $12.6 million, or 0.8%, and non-labor account underruns of $15.2 million, or 3.4%, with most accounts reporting favorable results. Ridership. March 2017 New York City Transit ridership totaled 205.7 million, or 5.5% below budget. March 2017 New York City Transit average weekday ridership results compared to March 2016 were as follows. Average weekday subway ridership was 5.6 million, a decrease of 2.8%. Average weekday local bus ridership was 1.9 million, a decrease of 8.9%. Express bus ridership was 40,000, a decrease of 3.6%, and paratransit ridership was 27,000, a decrease of 7.8%. An early look at preliminary April 2017 financial results. Preliminary April 2017 farebox revenue of $368.3 million was $1.4 million or 0.4% below budget. Preliminary April 2017 operating expenses were below budget by $35.9 million or 5.7%, due mostly to the favorable timing of health and welfare, OPEB current credits, and underruns reported in several non-labor accounts. And that concludes my report.
Any questions or comments on that? Is that the entirety of the report, of the finance report?
Oh, yes, it is.
Okay. Then I'll ask Steve Vidal to present the bus finance part of it.
Thank you. March 2017 preliminary farebox revenue was $18.5 million, or 3.8% below budget. This was primarily due to the snowstorm on March 14th that deposited more than 7 inches of snow and colder than normal weather in March, including 5 days with temperatures of 15 degrees or more below normal. MTA bus year-to-date non-reimbursable expenses were below budget by $5.8 million, or 3.2%. Labor expenses exceeded budget by $3.2 million, or 2.4%, primarily due to higher running times and traffic, vacancies, availability, weather, and the timing of billings and reimbursable projects. Non-labor expenses were under budget by $9 million, or 19.1%, primarily due to the timing of maintenance contracts. On ridership, MTA bus preliminary ridership for March 2017 was $10.8 million, or 6.2% below budget. The 12-month rolling average through February 2017 showed a slight decline of 0.8% in weekday ridership and remained the same for weekend ridership as compared to the prior year. This concludes the MTA bus finance and ridership report.
Are there any questions on that part of the finance report? Then I'll ask John O'Grady to address the capital program.
Thank you and good morning. Capital program results. Commitments during March 2017 totaled $207.7 million. This included implementation of long-term resiliency measures at 9 stations and 1 fan plant in Brooklyn and Queens, 2 contracts for station modifications, station component repairs at 3 locations on the 8th Avenue line in Manhattan, and the initial stair phase of the ADA accessibility project at Court Square Station on the Crosstown line in Queens. It also included multiple contracts for replacement of mainline track and mainline switches under the 2017 Track and Switch program. Completions during the month of March totaled $211 million. This included repairs at St. George Interlocking and Yard on Staten Island to address the damage from Superstorm Sandy, and multiple contracts for the replacement of mainline track and mainline switches in the 2015 and 2016 Track and Switch program. This concludes the capital program report.
Thank you. Mr. Albert has a question.
Yeah, on the first paragraph, you probably want to change Nassau Street to Nassau Avenue on the Crosstown line. And then on the next page, the closeout of Hell Points at 233 and 238 on the White Plains Road line. It's not on White Plains Road itself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other map-making comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Steve Plachaki to present the procurement report.
Good morning. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit's procurements, includes 8 actions totaling $24.2 million in expenditures. I would like to highlight 2 procurement actions included in this month's agenda. The first action is the award of 4 purchase contracts to test and evaluate track intrusion detection systems designed to detect and warn of intrusions by persons or objects onto the subway tracks and station areas. The combined total estimated amount of these contracts is approximately $1.7 million. This procurement constitutes Phase 2 of a pilot program previously established to evaluate these emerging track safety technologies. Under this pilot program, New York City Transit is able to test the effectiveness of various technologies and whether they could be successfully integrated into New York City Transit's system. At the conclusion of this second and final test and evaluation phase, New York City Transit will undertake a comparative analysis of each of the participating track intrusion technologies to determine the benefit of installing some or all of these systems across various station environments. Phase 1 similarly involved an evaluation of 4 separate technologies and was approved by the board in January 2014. The evaluation was completed in July 2016, and 3 of the 4 technologies were found to be potentially suitable for one or more of the various New York City Transit station configurations. CPM has identified and selected 4 additional companies to participate in Phase 2 pilot program. Awards will be made to Extralis Incorporated for video intrusion analytics in the amount of $131,129, Duos Technologies Incorporated for laser-induced differential absorption radar, also known as LIDAR, in the amount of $449,210, Electronic Interface Associates Incorporated for thermal camera, lasers, and video management in the amount of $430,232, and Clearsea System Engineering for laser pattern recognition in the amount of $673,957,000. Each of these systems uses a different type of technology to create an electronic curtain that, if crossed, will trigger an audible and visual notification at the rail control center. The approaching train operator will be alerted through a series of strobe lights mounted in the tunnel. The 4 systems will be installed by in-house forces with technical guidance provided by the participating firms. The variations in pricing arise from differences in the materials, technologies, and design approaches utilized by each company. In addition to the hardware and software, the agreed-upon pricing under each contract includes 1-year maintenance and support. The second item is the award of 2 competitively solicited and negotiated contracts. One for a 10-year contract with Origami Risk, LLC, to provide a workers' compensation claims administration system in the estimated amount of $3.4 million, and the second for a 5-year contract to Corvell Corporation to provide trained claims examiner consultants in the estimated amount of $4.3 million. The New York City Transit's Department of Law Workers' Compensation Division currently utilizes a proprietary legacy 30-year-old workers' compensation information system to manage workers' compensation cases. The existing system is outdated beyond its useful life and requires replacement. A competitive request for proposals was solicited in May 2016 for a new workers' compensation claims administration system as part of a strategic plan developed in conjunction with MTA's master insurance broker and risk management consultant, March Consulting Services, to improve New York City Transit's handling of workers' compensation claims. Also pursuant to the strategic plan, the RFP requested proposals for the services of third-party claims examiner consultants who will be engaged in examining claims within the Workers' Compensation Division to pattern best industry workers' compensation claims handling practices for current employees and assist in providing training and guidance to staff going forward to promote adherence to best practices. Extensive outreach to potential proposals was performed in conjunction with Marsh to cultivate robust competition. The RFP allowed for the submission of proposals for the system, examiners, or both system and examiners. Proposals were received on June 10, 2016. 5 companies proposed to furnish the system. 3 companies proposed to provide claims examiner services. Only 1 firm proposed on the system and examiners combined. After a thorough review of the proposals in accordance with the evaluation criteria, the selection committee selected 2 firms, Origami Risk, LLC, and Ventive Technology Incorporated, to participate in negotiations for the system, and Corvell Corporation and York Risk Services Incorporated to participate in negotiations for the claims examiner consulting services. After the conclusion of negotiations, all 4 firms submitted best and final offers. After the review of the best and final offers, selection committee unanimously recommended Origami for the system and unanimously recommended Corvell for award of the examiners. For the system, Origami was unanimously determined to be the highest technically ranked proposer based on its demonstrated successful use of its claim system, experience in configuring and customizing the system, and highly experienced team for data conversion and claims migration. For the examiners, Corvell was unanimously determined to be the highest technically ranked proposer due to the experience, qualifications, and training of the proposed claims examiners, experience managing claims examiners, and depth of claims examiner resources. While both Origami's and Corvell's BAFO pricing was slightly higher than their competition's pricing, less than 1% in Origami's case and approximately 5.5% or $45,000 per year in Corvell's case, The Selection Committee unanimously agreed both Origami's and Corvell's technical superiority far outweighed the slight differences in price between their competition and therefore offered best value solutions to New York City Transit. The final prices offered by both recommended firms have been found to be fair and reasonable. I request your approval of all items in the agenda.
Before questions and comments, may I have a motion to approve in a second? Is there a second? Questions or comments on these procurements, Mr. Albert?
Steve, on the intrusion protection, is this, I noticed you used the term in station, is this not in tunnels as well, the proposed
The only portion that's actually in the tunnel are the strobes that would notify and alert the actual train operators. There is communication back to the RCC in terms of anything that falls into that or breaks that curtain that's created in the station area.
So is it a separate procurement that will be for the in-tunnel intrusion protection?
Correct.
Okay, and are we, because the New York subway is a unique environment, are we testing these various proposers in a station to see how they work, or are we just testing them on paper?
No. We're actually physically incorporating them into a station for testing.
Okay. Each company is getting a different test, in other words.
Well, they're all getting a similar test, and they're all aligned so that we can compare them evenly, so that no one has a certain advantage. But we line them all up on one platform, two on one platform, two on another. Just make sure that they're in a similar environment for evaluation.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Darrell, is there a standard speed in which trains enter the subway station?
Yes, I'll give that to Winton.
It does vary from station to station. There are certain civil speed restrictions entering certain stations, but generally the trains can come into the station at the speed that they were traveling in the tunnel, and then they're required to slow down at the first signal, and then as they're coming to the stop. If the train operator has instructions to go through the station, then they have to reduce their speed to 15 miles per hour.
And do platform loading guidelines impact that speed?
They do not.
And do you have a sense of what the braking distance is for, let's say, the bracket of speed that a train is entering the station? So if a train is entering at 5 miles per hour, what the braking distance would be for an emergency stop versus 20 miles per hour?
Yeah, that would vary, excuse me, according to the car class. And we do have that information. We have tables, but I certainly wouldn't have it at hand right now. But that's something that our engineering forces use to design the signaling system.
I just want to say that each train that we buy has a speed and stopping curve that they're all required to abide by. For instance, if a train with a speed of about 35 miles per hour, the stopping distance would be about 332 feet. So there's a grade that goes according to that.
Yes, on the Intuit Innovations contract for paratransit, this is installed on. I mean, we don't own any of this equipment that it's put in on, right? The actual.
No, we do.
The buses.
No, we actually. Well, this is on the paratransit.
On the paratransit
yes.
vehicles, we own them.
Yes, we physically own the vehicles as well as the equipment that's acquired, and we reuse that. So, in other words, when what we're saying in the staff summary is that there's a useful life of a vehicle. Let's say it's around 7 years, 6 years. And the useful life of this equipment would be, let's say, 15 years. We would take it off the vehicle that would be retired and reinstall it on a new vehicle to get its useful life out of it.
But we don't operate this vehicle, do we?
Our paratransit carriers do.
Okay, we contract with someone to operate these vehicles. So this provides us with knowledge to know where the vehicle is, how long it took. We know where all our vehicles are and how long they took to get and when they picked people up. And we should be able to, and this is all the paratransit vehicles that are used?
Yeah, all of the paratransit vehicles that we physically own and give out to carriers.
Right, but then there are carriers that provide their own vehicles. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we wouldn't do we have that data for those carriers as well?
Yeah, we have three primary types of carriers. It's the dedicated carriers, then we have broker carriers which provide black car services, and then we also use taxis. For the dedicated carriers, we have GPS equipment. For the brokers, they're all GPS equipped. We're currently in the process now of installing an application that will allow us to monitor their vehicles also, the same way we do with the dedicated carriers. And for the taxis, we do not have GPS equipment. However, we're able to track e-hail vehicles that we dispatch on a website, which allows us to track the GPS movement of those vehicles.
I'm asking because it means our statistics should pretty much reflect people's experiences in some way, and I found, just from hearing from complaints, that that's not necessarily the case. I mean, Mr. Rushinov testified today, but he's not the only person. I don't know if I'd elevate it to the pain that people are suffering to biblical proportions, but still, nevertheless, I've heard some these stories, and you know they're not uncommon, the 2-hour, 3-hour waits, and I'm just, I see our statistics, and they don't seem to reflect that, and I've been wondering over the years, actually, why there's a disconnect.
The statistics for the dedicated carriers come directly from the GPS. That's the no-shows, the on-time performance, and the ride time. Overall, the system is about 90%, 92% on time. However, what happens in paratransit is that there is always an exception where it turns into a really bad ride. And the reason for that is that it's very hard to recover a paratransit trip. Unlike fixed route system, there's not another bus coming down the line very quickly. So when something breaks down, whether it's the vehicle itself or whether a passenger gets sick or whether that vehicle gets stuck in traffic, that creates a real problem for recovering that trip. And those are the experiences that I think stand out in most people's minds.
All right, thank you. I just didn't realize we had actually pretty good monitoring of almost all the rides, so that was good to hear. Thank you.
Ms. Vanderpool.
I want to go back to my question about loading guidelines on the platforms, and I'm asking that question because as I think through the procurement for the intrusion detection system, that is for the safety of customers and employees, right? So why don't we have loading guidelines on the platforms that impact the speed of vehicles or trains coming into the station?
You're saying that based on the loading of a platform, we should determine the speed entering the station?
It's more an inquiry. So, for example, as we're thinking through, there's been so many ideas suggested by members of the board and, of course, the public and staff of ways to reduce fatalities and injuries on the subway tracks. And this procurement is one example of trying to address that and manage and mitigate against that risk. And it makes me wonder why we don't have loading guidelines on the platform. So if we have a particularly crowded platform, what governs the speed of the train entering in a particularly precarious situation that may be caused by X, Y, Z? So my question is really a larger point about complementing all these different actions and investments in order to maximize security on the tracks, which is why I'm asking, are there impediments to creating these sorts of guidelines? What governs those decisions? And you may not have the answer, and I understand that, but I'm just raising the question as we continue to grapple with increasing delays on the subway system, for example, and all the other measures that have been put forth, such as platform controllers. Why are we not coupling that with an examination into adding loading guidelines for, looking at how loading guidelines might impact the speed of trains entering the station?
So I hear you loud and clear. I think I know where you're going. I don't think we have an answer for you now. I mean, really, it's about a delicate balance of remaining safe first and foremost and running an effective service, you know, a rapid transit service. So I think that where you're going, I think we get, but we would have to come back to you because that's a very, very delicate issue, and it requires a real balance. So if you don't mind, we would defer to come back. Okay? Thanks.
Mr. Vitiello?
Could we jump back to paratransit and for a minute? Am I remembering correctly that we have a pilot program going for Access-a-Ride and maybe paratransit with app-based car services? Is that true?
Yes, we'll bring Steve back up. That is the case.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to go over here.
Just park, Steve, and
I'll take it.
don't leave.
I'll take it.
The name placard says Steve already, so.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. We currently have not a pilot program, but what we're calling a proof of concept program.
Okay.
Where we're looking at app-based providers, both for regular sedan type service like Uber or Lyft,
right,
as well as e-hail providers, which are basically the same type of providers, only instead of using sedans, they use the green and yellow taxis.
Do you think in the next board meeting we can get an update on how that's going?
We can do that.
Okay. That'd be great. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I have two quick ones. One, I'm confident I speak for the rest of the committee when I tell you how happy I am that there are 4 good procurements for track intrusion technology, and that we will be testing them and reporting back as soon as possible to this committee on the results of those tests. It's something that's a long time in coming. On just one final question. This has been discussed an awful lot this morning on the GPS and apps available and perhaps not fully utilized on Access-a-Ride. I trust that all of these sources of rides for Access-a-Ride customers will eventually be merged onto one app where they can have control over their ride, their appointment making, know where their vehicle is at any time, and that we can begin to do away with this doubt about
The answer is yes. That's the intention.
How soon?
Steve, you're back up.
Yeah, one of the great features with that technology is that it gives our customers a lot more flexibility in how they book and they manage their trips. We are planning to test that as part of the pilot after we move out of the proof of concept. And I would say it's about a year away, maybe less.
There is a motion and second on the procurement package. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? The package carries. For service changes, I'll ask Judy McLean to discuss them.
Good morning. New York City Transit has 2 staff summaries this month, one which requires board approval, and the other is for board information only. The staff summary for board approval is to make X28 weekend service permanent. The X28 provides express service, bus service between South Brooklyn and downtown and midtown Manhattan. The X28 serves Seagate, Coney Island, Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, Bay Ridge, and Dyker Heights neighborhoods. Saturday and Sunday service on the X28 has been operating on a pilot period since September 4th, 2016. The service was reinstated due to requests brought to New York City Transit by elected officials and customers in South Brooklyn. A public hearing was held on April 3rd, 2017, and public comments were supportive of the X28 weekend service. I request your approval of this item.
May I have a motion and second? Is there any discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Ms. McLean?
The last staff summary for board information is for schedule adjustments on the Q route in order to more closely match service levels to ridership demand on the 2nd Avenue subway line. These schedule changes are a product of New York City Transit's continuing effort to review and revise subway schedules when feasible to ensure that they accurately meet customer demand and are in compliance with MTA Board-adopted loading guidelines. One additional southbound trip in the AM peak hour and one weekday northbound trip in the PM late PM peak period would be added. The cost of the additional service would be approximately $0.6 million annually, and the changes would be implemented in November 2017. This concludes the service change section of the agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Albert has a question on the service changes.
We got this really terrific report this morning from Winton about how ridership is burgeoning on the 2nd Avenue line, how it's taking pressure off the Lex, and all we get is one round trip added?
If you look at the last page in your staff summary, those were the periods. Actually, one period is over our loading guidelines, and we add service. And actually, preemptively, we are adding that second trip, even though we are below our loading guidelines, because we do believe that ridership will continue to grow.
So is there a possibility, because you probably don't need an entire Q line's worth of additional, is there a way that you could add service, say, between 96th Street and Atlantic Barclays or something and turn it around or something so it doesn't have to go all the way to Coney Island or something? Because I would assume that that's really the part of the line that really needs the even more additional service.
Some of these trips are not all Q lines coming up the line. We have the ability to we've been running a couple of N trains up.
Yes.
One of these trips is an R train, actually. So
an R train going to 96th Street, really?
Yes.
Oh.
So we actually are kind of creatively adding trips to the 2nd Avenue line, but
Are
that
those
doesn't.
trips reflected on the clocks?
Yes, they are.
If it's an out of the ordinary run, like an R or an N?
Yes, they are.
And would that be on people's apps if they needed to know when a train was coming? The additional R's and N's that would go to 96th Street would be reflected on those on the go?
Yes, these trips are in the schedule, so they're reflected in the apps.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If there is none, that concludes the service changes part, and I'll ask President Dyrick to come back and make special reports and presentations.
Thank you. Section 8 of this month's agenda includes our regular status report on the MetroCard program. Continuing with Section 9, we have 3 standard follow-up reports, all covering the first quarter of 2017, included for information. The first of these is the Transit Adjudication Bureau report. Next, we have the Elevator and Escalator Performance report. And lastly, we have the New York City Transit and MTA Bus Company EEO and diversity reports for your information. And that concludes the reports. Thank you.
Questions and comments on that part, Mr. Jones?
It's not exactly relevant, but I guess at last meeting we had a report by the signage going up to how to deal with the homeless. I was wondering whether a similar campaign couldn't be launched aimed at young people on fare evasion and the dangers of it. I put it out there. It's not quite relevant, but given the 30,000 arrests, given the new problems of potential threats to immigrants, perhaps it's time to put signage up, just as we do against smoking and a host of other activities that are dangerous, that we might put that forward. Thank you. I'm sorry I broke the course. Okay.
Final item on our agenda is the MTACC projects report. Dr. Haradnichenu.
I'll start by reporting on the Cortlandt Street number 1 station reconstruction. Just to recap, I believe last time we've said that we had 82 change orders to the contract. 67 of them were successfully completed. That leave 15 still open. Out of the 15 open, 9 of them are credits. So for that purpose, we at this point have not. We're trying to get around first to all of the ones that are actually for work being processed. 4 are in current negotiation and expect to be completed in the next few weeks, and 2 of them out of the 15 require additional scope clarification. Now, I want to make sure that I am addressing a few things. At this point, the work is not proceeding as we have expected, in the sense that there is a slowdown in response from the contractor. We have a number of potential risks in addition to that, and one of them has to do with leaks that are occurring from the surface. There are expansion joints that have been installed by the Port Authority that actually kind of fall in between 2 walls. One wall is our wall of the station, and the other one is the Port Authority wall. These leaks are being controlled through drip pans that are being buried in between the 2 walls. And we believe that over time, being undetected and being buried there, that may present a future potential risk for the drip pans to fail and the water leaks to go undetected. As a result, damages to new finishes could occur. So that's an issue that we have yet to solve. It will not be visible at the platform level because the leaks is happening between our wall and the Port Authority wall that goes to the outside. Just below that, there is another expansion joint that actually goes into our mezzanine. In this particular case, the mezzanine is at a lower level. So this is a concern that we have, and we are discussing that. In addition to that, we are having some issues that have to do with work that is not being prosecuted at the proper pace because the Port Authority in New York or New Jersey have utility obstructions that have not been removed. This is space that has been assigned to MTA New York City Transit, and that continue to impact the contractor's ability to work efficiently in these areas. We believe that the contractor needs to substantially increase submittals for communication system over the next 3 months and must commit the staffing necessary to complete the coordination. That is yet for us to see. So just want to make sure that we identify that. One other issue is that, and that's been for a while, the north end access of the station.
Please, forget the interruption. Could you please identify the contractor you're talking about?
Jadlock.
Okay.
O.H. Jadlock. I thought that there's no. So, in any event, the other thing is that the northern end, this is an area that was supposed to be vacated by the Port Authority in order for us to be able to construct an elevator and stairways to complete the ADA accessibility of the station. That was supposed to happen this June, is not happening. At this particular point, the port is may relinquish the site in basically end of December, beginning of January. We can still most probably build at this point the elevator, but not the stairs, so it does not necessarily make the station ADA acceptable according with the rules. Basically, the only other thing that I would want to mention is that Don Creighton, that is the project exec, will provide an update to the community board in June of this year, June 15. That concludes my presentation for Cortlandt Street. The other thing I would like to mention is on the 2nd Avenue Subway Phase 2. We have on April 28th have given a notice to proceed to the community outreach consultant. I want to make sure that everyone understands that all of the consultants needed to proceed with the project are on board, the environmental consultant as well as the design consultant. The Community Information Center that we have right now at 84th and 2nd Avenue was closed at the end of April, and a new Community Information Center just west of the Metro North on 125th Street will be open at the end of May. One can already see the signs are there. Most of the construction is completed. I believe that on Friday we're waiting for an inspection to get a C of O approved, and that's it's in the process. The Tim Gianfrancesco, that is the project exec for the Community Board 11, is making a presentation to the Community Board on June 6th and to Community Board 10 on June 13th. Would like to conclude actually the presentation with something that did happen on the first phase of 2nd Avenue, the 83rd Street station. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands there was nothing wrong with the escalators. The escalator, that was reported that the escalators were defective. There was not. We had a defective sensor that detected fire and smoke that trigger a misting system that actually created the situation that we needed to actually address the escalators that got wet. Otherwise, the station is open, the escalators are working, and just want to make sure that it's clear that there was nothing wrong with the escalators.
In the interest of clarity, is this not the first time this has occurred with the mist system? That a sensor has been defective in another station?
Well, actually, that's not, no, it's not correct.
Please explain it.
We did have an activation at 96th Street. However, that happened due to the fact that the workers were creating dust that actually emulated smoke, and two I have to sensor were activated. That was actually through activation due to something that the workers working there were actually, they should have protected the sensors. So yes, it wasn't activated, but it was not because there was a faulty sensor.
Anyone else? Thank you.
All right, Chief, thank you. We'll be in touch.
Okay, partner.
Nice job.
It's been real.
Thanks for the guidance.